In the dark future of Cyberpunk Red, violence is inevitable. It doesn't matter if you are an executive living the high life as a cog in the mega corporation machine or a street thug trying to make a few euro dollars. Sooner or later, you're going to end up in a fight. Every role in Cyberpunk Red is capable of surviving in a fight, but the solo is the role focused squarely on not only surviving, but thriving in combat. Hello there, and welcome to the latest video in my series, How to Run Cyberpunk Red. This video will be focusing on the solo role, including examples of solo characters from Cyberpunk lore, the different life path options that could fit a solo character, the role-specific life path that solos use to provide greater background details, and steps for how to build a solo character. As always, these are my opinions on character builds, so take everything with a grain of salt. Feel free to leave a comment below if you have any questions about this video or any of the others in my series. Before diving into the breakdown, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. I'm a small channel and every little bit helps. You'll also find my link tree in the description below. There are links for all of my socials as well as my Patreon. Patreon subscribers get early access to my YouTube scripts, exclusive reviews, as well as fiction and poetry I'm currently working on. Thanks for the indulgence. Solos as a character role are going to be more heavily combat focused than any other role in Cyberpunk Red, but that doesn't mean they cannot be nuanced characters. There are a plethora of examples of solos in the lore of our Talsorian game's Cyberpunk universe. The most prominent of solos is Morgan Blackhand, considered the prototype of what a solo can be: pragmatic, focused, and capable. Blackhand represents the solo who is willing to take Eurodollars to commit violence, but on his own terms and without crossing too many moral boundaries. On the flip side, there's Atom Smasher, the cyborg boogeyman of the Cyberpunk universe. Atom Smasher is what happens when a solo has a completely broken moral compass. Smasher revels in carnage, specifically taking gigs that will result in massive collateral damage just for the fun of it. The fact that he's getting paid is secondary to the thrill of proving that metal is better than meat. Less extreme examples would be Rogue Amendiaris, before she becomes the Queen of the Afterlife, and Jackie Wells, your trusted compadre in Cyberpunk 2077. Rogue is a tactical genius, able to put together devastating plans under extreme circumstances, and always finding a way to rise to the top. Similar to Blackhand, Rogue is pragmatic, but only to a point. She has her ideals that she sticks to, a code she won't violate, as seen in the flashbacks to 2024 and 2013 in Johnny Silverhand's memories. Jackie is a street-level solo, someone who isn't going to come up with the perfect plan for the situation, but will provide backup for the person who does conceive of the plan. For Jackie, loyalty to his friends, his family, and his neighborhood are the reasons he works as a solo. He wants to make a better life for himself, and working as a solo is the best way to use the talents he has. From a gameplay standpoint, solos are designed to be the heavy in a crew of edge runners, similar to the fighter or barbarian class in Dungeons & Dragons. In the time of the Red, solos serve as bodyguards for corpo rats, gunslingers for hire, or street vigilantes who look out for their neighborhood. Violence is the trade for solos, and they are very good at dishing it out. During combat in Cyberpunk Red, the solo tends to be the first one to move in combat, but not always. The role ability combat awareness is what allows a solo to be a powerful force on the streets, giving them the ability to move faster, be more aware of their surroundings, and find weaknesses they can exploit in their opponents. Let's dive into how to build a solo in Cyberpunk Red. As I mentioned in my Rocker Boy video, these are just my suggestions for how to build a solo, using the information in the role-based life path and the street rat and edge runner templates laid out in the core rulebook. Nothing I say in this video should be considered the gospel truth for how to build a solo. Just like with Rocker Boys, cultural origin really isn't a big factor in the character creation unless you have a specific build in mind. Instead, let's focus on personality options. Depending on how you want to build your solo, you could go with the personality traits stable and serious, indicating your solo is level-headed and takes what they do with the utmost seriousness. Another combination that you could go with is moody, rash, and headstrong, which could fit well if your solo is a street-level vigilante or neighborhood gun for hire. If you want to go completely against type, you could also select friendly and outgoing, which would make the solos switch to choosing violence even more of a dramatic shift in character. Clothing style, hairstyle, and affectation are likewise options that you'll want to think about depending on the character build you're going for. If you're trying to build a John Wick style solo, then business wear or high fashion might be more in order. If you're planning on playing a character like Jackie Wells, then gang colors, generic chic, or leisure wear would be more appropriate. With hairstyles, it varies again based on how you envision the character. A John Wick type of solo would probably go with neat and short or short and spiked as their hairstyle. Someone building a Rogue Amendiaras type of solo might opt for long and ratty or wild and all over. For affectation, tattoos, ritual scars, and spiked gloves are good options. Again, depending on the vision you have for the character that you're building. When it comes to what your solo values most and how they see other people, think about what you want your solo to consider as their primary motivations. Money as a motivating factor is always the easy answer, particularly in a setting like the time of the Red, where everyone is struggling to survive. Your word or honor are good options for someone building a solo that wants to be a cyberpunk samurai. Vengeance, family, and friendship are also good motivators. Due to the violent nature of their work, the way solos see other people could be pretty dark. I would think carefully about what you decide for how your solo sees other people. Moving on to original background, this life path option is a really fun playground to figure out where your solo got started. Obvious options are ganger family, combat zoners, reclaimers, and edge runners, since that would explain the solo's experience with and easy application of violence. It could also be fun to choose an option like corporate managers or corporate technicians, particularly if your solo seeks employment with a megacorporation to utilize their skills as a bodyguard. That leads to childhood environment, which could give you a good idea of how your solo first became acquainted with how difficult life on the edge could be. Living on the streets or in the ruins of a deserted town, perhaps even growing up in the heart of a combat zone, would all be good ways to devise where your solo first learned how to fight, but more importantly, when they started to realize they were good at fighting. The family crisis can really be anything, but you'll definitely want to make sure it matches up well with the original background and childhood environment options that you've selected. Now, let's dive into the solo's role-based life path options. First up is the question, what kind of solo are you? The options range from being employed by a corporation as a wet work operative or enforcer to street muscle for hire, like Luke Cage from Marvel Comics. The next question is, what's your moral compass like? Here's where you get to decide if you're more of an atom smasher or someone with principles in this dark dystopia. Following that is the question of where your operational territory is, which doesn't really restrict your options, but gives you an idea of where your solo has been working prior to the first session of the game. And last but not least, the question about who's gunning for your solo helps to add a potential antagonist that your game master can create and use later on down the line. Now that the life path options have been covered, let's dive into the bones of a character, the stats. On page 74 in the core rulebook, you'll find the Street Rat and Edge Runner template for the solo's stats. Just like with the Rocker Boy, you can roll one 10-sided die once and then pick a row of stats based on that die roll. If you go with the Edge Runner option, you'll roll the 10-sided die 10 times, selecting a stat line based on that number, starting with intelligence. These are the quick and dirty methods for stat generation and work wonders if you're not looking to go fully in-depth on character creation. If you're going with the complete package build, though, I would still suggest reviewing this template to get some ideas on how to divide up the 62 points you get for the complete package build. The main dump stat from the solo template is tech, which the highest score being 5 and the lowest being 3. Body, reflex, and dexterity are the stats where you see the most number 8 entries. This makes sense since reflex and dexterity are key stats for the combat-related skills you'll be focusing on. Body is one of the 2 stats that help determine your hit points, which as a solo would definitely be on the higher scale since you're going to be absorbing a lot of punishment. Intelligence and cool have a good range between 6 and 7, but that's more if you want to build a tactically sound solo who thinks before acting or tries to talk their way out of a fight. If you go high on body, you don't necessarily need to go high on your will stat. Lastly, there's empathy. The range in the template is between 4 and 6. If you're looking for dump stats, then tech, intelligence, cool, and move are where you may want to consider dropping down to between 3 to 5. I wouldn't suggest lowering move to below 5 just to give your solo more mobility on the battlefield. Empathy can settle at a 6 unless you intend to go heavy on cybernetics, in which case you'll want to raise that to a 7. Body should definitely be set to an 8, and I would also suggest having either reflex or dexterity at a 7 or 8 as well. Having both reflex and dexterity at 8 gives you a great deal of versatility between melee and ranged combat, as well as being able to dodge bullets with a reflex of 8. Reflex is also the stat used for initiative, so having it at 7 or 8 makes sense. On page 86, you'll find the Street Rat template for the solo's skills. Unlike the Rocker Boy template, which had a few 4s in the list, the solo template is cut and dry with several skills set to the bare minimum rank of 2 and everything else set to 6, including auto fire, handgun, interrogation, perception, melee weapon, shoulder arms, and evasion. There are a few others with 6 ranks in them, such as tactics, resist torture and drugs, and first aid. The emphasis here is on skills that allow the solo to keep an eye on their surroundings, resist pain under duress and dish it out as needed, and to be capable of avoiding and dealing out damage through any available means. Flipping forward to page 88, you'll find the Edge Runner template for the solo, which is the predetermined list of skills to pick from, which is the same list of skills from the Street Rat template, but now you have more freedom to determine how many ranks to put in those skills. Of course, there's also the complete package option, which means picking from the entire list of skills while also making sure the main 13 skills have at least 2 ranks in them. With the complete package option, there are some suggestions I have. Brawling is one of the base skills that you have to have at least 2 ranks in. If your solo is more of a street brawler, putting additional ranks in brawling isn't a bad idea, but you may not want to invest more than 3 or 4 ranks. Alternatively, I would suggest reviewing the martial art options available in the core rulebook and Interface Volume 4. The martial arts skill allows you to select a specific martial art form and put ranks into it, granting you access to special attack options that can be devastating, provided you meet the triggers for them. Martial arts, like auto fire, is a ×2 skill, meaning you have to spend double the number of points to buy 1 rank in that skill. I would also suggest having melee weapon, handgun, and shoulder arms at 6 ranks to start at character creation. Solos should be proficient in practically every kind of weapon from the start. Speaking of weapons, let's jump ahead to page 98 for the Street Rat Edge Runner template for the Solo's weapons and armor. Like before with the Rocker Boy, you'll start out with Light Armor Jack for the head and body, which grants you stopping power 11 armor. For weapons, you'll start with an assault rifle, a very heavy pistol, and good chunk of ammunition for both. You have the option of selecting a heavy melee weapon or a bulletproof shield. You can go either way with that, but I would base that decision off what cybernetics you plan to install in your solo. Solos don't get a lot in terms of outfit and gear, as you can see from the Street Rat Edge Runner template on page 103. Solos get an agent, since they'll need some means of contacting potential employers for gigs, and that's it as far as gear is concerned. The default outfit for a solo is leisure wear, meant to show that the solo wants comfortable clothing that doesn't hinder their ability to move around on the streets when a fight breaks out. If you're buying your own gear and outfits using the complete package option, there are a number of items I can suggest purchasing, like binoculars, unless you get some of the eye implant cybernetic options. A carry-all bag is essential for carrying your weapons around in areas where it's considered impolite to openly carry your weapons. A grapple gun and smart glasses could also be a good option to invest in during character creation. Last but not least is the Cyberware for your solo. On page 117, you'll find the Street Rat Edge Runner template for the solo, which includes a few items. A biomonitor for tracking your vitals is never a bad thing. The neural link is essential for including a piece of speedware. The template gives you the option of selecting the Sandevistan Speedware implant or Wolvers, which can be installed without needing a cyber arm. If you decided on taking a heavy melee weapon with the weapon options, then stick with selecting the Sandevistan here. If you're going with the complete package build for Cyberware, I would use the template as a good starting point. You can only have one piece of speedware in your system. The Sandevistan has to be activated, but it gives you a +3 bonus to initiative for 1 minute, which is a long time in combat. It does, however, have a 1-hour cooldown, which means if you run through multiple combats, you should only use it sparingly. The Kerenznikov gives you a +2 bonus to initiative with no activation requirements, but it does have a higher humanity loss compared to the Sandevistan. A pain editor is a good implant to get as a solo, since it lets you ignore penalties once you get to the seriously wounded state, which is when you're at less than half your hit points. Getting a cyber arm or a cyber leg is not a bad option at character creation, especially if you want to hide a melee or ranged weapon in your arm to give you a weapon that's available at any time. You may also want to consider getting subdermal armor, since it's self-repairing, which will save you money on repairing armor that is inevitably going to get wrecked. Combat awareness is the role ability for solos that give them unique advantages on the streets. On page 146 in the core rulebook, you'll find the complete breakdown of what abilities you gain access to. For each rank in combat awareness, a solo can designate a point into one of the abilities found on this page. You are able to reallocate those points, so there's a great deal of flexibility with combat awareness. A solo can reallocate points when combat starts, but before initiative is rolled, during combat by using their action, or any time outside of combat. Some of the abilities require more points to become active than others. First up is damage deflection, which allows a solo to reduce some of the incoming damage in a fight. For every 2 points put into damage deflection, up to a total of 10 points, the solo is able to decrease the first points of damage by 1 point. For example, let's say the solo has 4 points in damage deflection, allowing them to decrease incoming damage by 2. In the first round of combat, 2 points of damage manages to get through the solo's armor. Instead of those 2 points reducing the solo's hit points, they simply ignore it. But let's say another attack manages to connect in the first round, and this one gets 3 points of damage past the solo's armor. Those 3 points would reduce the solo's hit points because damage deflection only affects the first damage taken in a given round of combat. Fumble recovery is a costly ability, but a useful one. Your solo is skilled enough that they don't suffer as sharply from mishaps on the battlefield like others do. By putting 4 points into fumble recovery, you ignore the critical failure rules for rolling a 1 on a 10-sided die for attack rolls. The roll is still treated as a 1 for calculating the overall skill total to see if your attack succeeds, though. Initiative reaction is probably the ability most solos will put their points into, particularly as combat starts. This ability represents a solo's training to respond quickly to danger. For each point put into this ability, the solo's initiative roll receives a +1 bonus. Initiative reaction is one of the reasons the running joke in Cyberpunk is that combat starts with the solos and then everyone else follows. The next ability is called Precision Attack, and this is another combat skill that solos will probably want to invest in as they increase their rank in combat awareness. For every 3 points put into Precision Attack, your solo gains a +1 bonus to all attack rolls made during combat. That may not sound like a lot compared to the bonuses you can gain in other TTRPGs, but in Cyberpunk Red, a +1 bonus can be the difference between hitting an impossible shot or missing. Spot Weakness is next on the list, and this one is an ability most solos will want to use early on, while still being extremely useful as the solo ranks up. Essentially, your solo has been trained to look for weaknesses in every form of armor that can be used. For each point put into Spot Weakness, your solo can add 1 point of damage to the first successful attack in a combat round. This damage is added before the armor's stopping power is used to determine how much damage is soaked by the armor. Last but not least is Threat Detection. This ability is most useful outside of combat, so it's not a bad idea to shift points into this ability once combat ends. For each point put into Threat Detection, the solo gains a +1 bonus to perception skill checks. As should be abundantly clear at this point, solos are the specialists when it comes to violence in Cyberpunk Red. This isn't to say they are one-dimensional brutes. Look no further than Jackie Wells from Cyberpunk 2077. Granted, Jackie was never going to be an intellectual giant, but he was an insightful person. Jackie's mandala, while it might be considered hideous, was an artistic expression that provided comfort for him. His ritual of reading "For Whom the Bell Tolls" before every job reveals someone who respects and cherishes the connections he has with the people around him. It's expected that your solo will have ranks and skills that are combat focused, like martial arts, evasion, handgun, etc., because that's the primary function of the solo role in Cyberpunk Red. However, that doesn't mean you as a player should skip over creating a well-rounded individual that gives you moments to indulge in role-playing of that character. This becomes especially important if you decide you want to multiclass into one of the other roles of the game. In the DLC Collecting the Random, you'll find the examples of what it could look like if a solo multiclasses into another role. A solo that decides not to make tech one of their dump stats could multiclass into the tech role, giving a solo the skills they need to manufacture, maintain, and even create their own weapons and armor. A solo exec combo would be an interesting hybrid, creating a corpo rat that isn't afraid to lead from the front and get their hands dirty. The description for the solo lawman is a good one as well, which could be perfect for building a character that works as a street vigilante or as part of a small organization trying to keep the peace in one of the combat zones. That covers it for the solo role breakdown. Remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons to get updates when I drop new content. Also check out my Patreon in my link tree below. Patreon subscribers get early access to my YouTube scripts, as well as exclusive reviews and fiction or poetry I'm working on. Thanks for watching, Chooms.